Now, my next guest is a phenomenal musician and, even more importantly, a beautiful human being that I just was fortunate enough to tour with this summer. So we'll talk about him. It's Neville from Belouis Some. Neville, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, and you can see me all right?
I can see you fantastic. Yeah, we got a
Great,
little
thank you.
we got a little pocket door in the back. I can see through to maybe that's the kitchen in the background.
Great, great, great. No, because I've got dark glasses on. I'm inside and I can't see anything, but I'm sort of guessing everything at the moment.
I,
So,
I, I
and
love
it's
it.
nighttime here as well, or
It is.
almost.
So
So,
you're in the UK right now. I think
yeah,
you're in London. Is that correct?
yeah. I've just got back to London. I'm still jet lagged. You always forget how horrible jet lag is. It's
Uh,
just annoying, isn't
you,
it?
you know the key? If you just keep moving, you'll never acclimate to it, and it never becomes an issue. You're just always constantly jet lagged.
Yeah, if you, yeah, yeah, absolutely. But yes, I can't argue with that. No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. So we finished those shows about a week ago. We had
Yeah,
phenomenal tour, Lost 80s Live, a really fun lineup. You guys, the Vapors, General Public, China
big
Crisis.
country,
Oh my
big
God, Big
country.
Country, of course.
Yeah,
Josie Cotton. They had Peter
yeah,
Godwin. One of the shows, Stacey Cube, sorry, and
yeah.
um,
General
God,
Public.
man, yeah, Wakeling. You probably know a lot of these guys from tours
Do you
back in
know?
the day.
Do you know what I know? Big Country. I know China Crisis. Um, I've never met Dave Wakeling, who's the nicest man on earth,
Totally.
and I'd never met Mike Score before, who's also a really nice guy.
Oh yeah, we forgot
Um,
to mention A Flock of Seagulls being in that
yeah,
tour too.
yeah,
So
absolutely. So, in fact, everyone on the tour, the Polecats, everyone was so lovely. And we have got to mention the flock of seagulls who
yeah.
you were with. But yeah, everyone was so nice. I mean, there were no arseholes.
Oh, buddy, we lucked out. We really did.
Yeah,
And then hosted by MC Richard Blade, of course,
of
from
course, nice guy.
Sirius
Yeah,
XM. And you know, in years past, I mean, we've done Lost 80s Live for several years, and there's always a different lineup. And you're right. I'm not to
yeah,
say that years past there were, assholes and people that get sour apples in the
yeah.
bunch, but
Yeah.
this year seemed to be special that everybody had the camaraderie. We kind of held
Everyone
each
got
other
on
up.
from day one, and you know what? There was a WhatsApp group before the shows even started, and it was just cool.
Yeah.
So
If I remember correctly too, the year prior, you had done a big tour with The Alarm and Gene Loves Jezebel. Is that right?
no, well, what happened was I was going to do a tour with Alarm last year, and it was called
Yeah,
off 3 days before it was due to start in New Orleans because Mike's cancer came back,
sure. Yeah,
and of course he's since passed away. But that
yeah.
was so my first tour or my first anything in 35 years. I'd made a really big deal about I'm going to play again for the first time in 30 years, and I'm going to go to America, and blah 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 blah. And I'd done 3 or 4 months worth of press, and 3 days before it was due to start,
Oh
and
man, I didn't.
the band the band were actually loading the van to drive from New York to New Orleans. I've got an
Oh
American band, so um, yeah, that was a bit awful, really, but for lots of reasons, not obviously not least because of Mike.
of course,
Bless him, great guy. But
the best
so
guy.
that was last year, and then I did a small tour with Gene Loves Jezebel um, in April this year. So I got
Okay.
back on the road and started to get the craft back, and play the band in and things like that.
And so
Yeah,
that was the band that you had, the guys from New
yeah,
York. You had Kevin
yeah,
Tooley
yeah,
and
yeah.
Pablo and Bruce. And, man,
Yeah.
amazing guys for
I
sure.
like I like them very much, and they're very good natured, and they just take it, because
Yeah.
I'm pretty full on, and they're all right.
Yeah,
they're
well, and
they're
Sean,
okay.
I forgot to mention Sean Seymour
And
too, man.
Sean, yeah,
They're all incredible
yeah,
musicians, but as I got to know each guy individually
yeah,
too, um, I put myself in the position of being band members, because there were
yeah,
so many people on this tour with all the
yeah,
different bands, and so you imagine personalities and how they would
yeah,
mesh. And you guys were traveling in a van as were we, right? So you guys are
yeah,
around close proximity, right?
yeah,
And um, a lot of people that look from the outside at bands that are touring
yeah,
probably don't realize that a relationship in a band is much like a romantic relationship, right? There's a lot
Yeah,
of compromise,
yeah.
and when somebody maybe snores it, when they're in the van, or they leave their socks out or something like that, those are as off-putting as a romantic relationship might be. Except you got
Well,
5 guys around each other, right?
well, the thing is, the thing is, we did 7,000 miles
Yeah.
in that people carrier. We did 22 states. We did 26 hotels in 33 days.
Wow.
Um, and no one actually lost it ever, really.
Right.
I didn't stop talking once. Okay. So they just sat there in complete, they were just, I don't know what they were. I think they really hate me, actually.
Oh,
But I
no,
don't.
that's not true. Actually, there was a lot of reverence, when I would talk to
Yeah.
the other band
Yeah.
members, and
Yeah.
there's no way they could have, because I watched the dynamic on stage too,
Yeah.
right?
It's a
So
great
that's
dynamic.
the
Yeah.
other thing. From the side stage, you get to see perspective that's different
Yeah.
from out front, and
No,
so they got to know you a lot more just
we
because
had a
you were
lot
in.
of fun. We had a
Yeah,
lot of fun. And, I'm really looking forward to touring a lot with them in the States. It's
good.
all I want to do now is just tour the States as much as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
and the tricky thing too is doing that if you've got family back home, right? So, you're back in.
Yeah. I've got young kids, I've got teenage kids, so and a wife, and but I have been, I was forced to take out 35 years of my career. I'd spent 15 years getting to a certain level, and then I was forced to take it out. And so I have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing it, and I have to bring them with me, and they have to accept that this is my mission. I wasn't, I've in some ways I've beaten the system, Kevin, because I'm back on the road. And frankly, at 65, everyone, when I said I was going on the road, they were, "You're mad. You haven't done it for 30 years. You can't."
Right.
And I have.
You know what? Oh, you're being the system in all ways,
Yeah.
honestly, because if you think about the bands that
Yeah.
maybe had the success that you did back in the day, and then completely go on a different trajectory and
Yeah.
attempt to come back, the support of fans might not be there. The technology of the way that the industry works is
Yeah.
different too, and you really did have massive support of the fans personally. As they announced the dates of the tour and as they announced the lineup, I
Yeah.
had great friends, especially out in California, that were so excited not to
Oh,
see
that's
me and my
wonderful.
band come back, but to see you, man. You
That's
had a huge
wonderful.
impact on these guys. Um,
Well,
you
it's
know,
great
and let's
because
talk about that a little bit about
it's
back in the
pity.
day.
It's pity the fucking industry didn't know it, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, not actually the industry. It was. I don't care about making records. I cared about going playing live, and
right.
because I'm a solo artist, um, agents always hated me. So in the 80s, and so it was not so much in the 80s, but the end of the 80s, and so it was always a problem being a solo artist. There's yeah, that's
O
it. It's always a
Okay,
problem.
so let's talk about your alter ego, right? So you've
Excuse
got
my
it.
language, by the way. Am I allowed to swear on your
Of
podcast?
course you are, man. This is,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
pretend we're in your living room right now and don't even worry about anybody watching this,
yeah.
right? So, uh, when, you talked about, being a solo artist, I mean, of course, Belouis Some is your alter ego,
Yeah.
Neville, is okay to call you by your regular
Yeah,
name?
Neville's my name. Just confuses everyone. Look, my name is Neville Keithley. Try
Yeah,
spelling it for a start.
yeah.
And now you know why I changed my name. You can't, you can't be Neville Keithley. I mean,
Well, it's harder to remember, but Belouis Some also has people wondering, "What is that name
yeah,
all
I don't know
about?"
what I was on. I was on some kind of weird. Certainly wasn't drugs. I wish it was, but it wasn't. It was. I needed a name, and I needed a name that didn't sound like the something or others, which
Yeah,
was, what everyone had. And I didn't want to name a solo artist name like Elton John or George Michael or, I mean,
yeah,
it was folk, you get labeled as folk music, and I wasn't folk music. I was more rock and, new wave, but I was quite glamorous new wave. I
yeah.
wasn't, I wasn't grungy, and it's really difficult to name yourself. In the US, they had a much easier time with my name than the UK. But in the
Really?
UK, they were like, "Whoa, what is Bluey Some?" And the UK press, as you know, Kevin, you've been around, is notoriously miserable,
Right.
and so they always hated me anyway. I mean, because I'm not a lefty fighting anarchist. I just wrote songs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That
Yeah.
didn't read. What are your songs about? Relationships, having fun, loving, whatever,
Yeah.
women. What do you mean? You're not trying to change the world and
Right.
bring the government down? No, fuck off.
Right.
And so my name was Belouis Some. I mean, and it was because of the Belouis something band. I never got the something, and I was in a hurry. I dyed my hair white because I looked so respectable as a normal civilian, and that they said no one will ever come and see you. So I dyed my hair white. And
Really? Oh, so, like, was it record label or management that told you you
no,
need
what what happened was I did my first gig. I got a band. Basically, I couldn't get arrested. Right, I had the
Yeah.
songs, couldn't get arrested until I played live. Right, and
Yeah.
I always wanted to play live, and I tried to put bands together, but the trouble is with bands is everyone had an opinion and they never turned up when they were supposed to. So to cut a long story short, I had an aunt who was alcoholic and lived in the country. She'd retired, and she was drank a bottle of whiskey a night, but she was great fun. And she said, well, you're obviously useless at what you're doing. Why haven't you succeeded yet? And I said, well, I need to put a band together and I can't do it. I haven't got the money. And I was working, painting and decorating, landscape gardener, taxi driver, you name it, I was doing it. But I was, I'd saved the money for a demo and saved the money for everything. And it just was never enough.
Yeah.
So she said, well, I'll give you the money. So she gave me, in those days, well, a few £100 and then another few £100 or whatever. But it was enough for me to pay the musos. I had the friends to be my band and do what I told them and pay the rehearsals and for me to style them. And I then went into central London and got the gigs. I lived in London
Okay.
anyway. And the problem was I didn't have a name and I looked very ordinary. So they said, you can't be Neville Keithley and look like you. Because I went to, I was quite posh.
Yeah.
I wasn't earthy,
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
or
they said,
edgy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I wasn't, I was,
You needed to harden the edges a little bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been pretty rough around the edges, but in a very polite way, And
Yeah.
so they said come up with a name, and I didn't know what to come up with. I don't know what the. Eventually, the Blues Brothers was out, and I remember thinking, well, Louie Louie is the great song. I'll
Right.
So I thought, well, okay, Bluey. What about Belouis something? What about the Bluey something
Really?
band?
That's where
Yeah,
that
I mean,
came
it's just
from?
yeah, and then, but I never got the something, and so. So and I literally had to print the posters. So I was Belouis Some,
Oh my
It's
god.
really as simple as that.
And your
Uh,
your alcoholic aunt was the one that funded the
Yeah,
initial,
she
like,
funded it. Yeah,
and
and funny enough, I the last time I spoke to her, she was very bad tempered and always very angry, and I rang her. I think not when I'd done Imagination. I think when I this is jumping ahead, but
yeah,
when I'd recorded sort of more of the songs in New York, and I rang her from New York. And she was in Northwest, middle of the country, and she had a party line. In those days, if you lived in the country, you shared a phone line with some other farm down the
right.
road. And so I remember having the farmer on the line as well. And I'm going, Jane, it's Neville. Neville, I just want to say I'm in New York. I've recorded my record. Thank you. Why are you calling me?
Oh my
It's just, you know.
gosh.
So, very good. Well done. Excellent. Okay. Well, okay. Goodbye.
She sounds like a Scouser, man.
Well, she was, a spinster aunt. She was
Sure.
great, but she was very tough. And anyway, the point is, I just needed that break, and I
Yeah.
got the break. But I was ready for it. I had Kevin. I'd been to every record company 10 times. I was a landscape gardener for a lord. And I remember I used to sneak off in my muddy clothes with my acoustic guitar and sit in record company offices playing songs. But I mean, these were all the songs that eventually became the first album.
Really?
So
Okay.
I'd got the songs right by then. I just didn't have the vehicle to take them to the next stage. And then, of course, the gigs went amazingly, and then, and all the fuckers who didn't want to sign me all wanted to sign me. Then.
Yeah, man. Well,
Yeah.
I've heard quite a bit of stories about, sort of the different iterations and how the re-releases of your singles actually really became a lot more successful, after the initial launch, right?
Well, only because the miserable English radio wouldn't play me because I I'm Belouis Some. I'm I'm a solo artist. I'm I look like a pretty boy, right? I've got quite a different sound,
Yeah.
and I've recorded with New York's finest.
Right.
How dare I? And I remember English radio said, well, and English press said, well, who does he think he is? How dare he? You
Sure.
know, and so the imagination came out. I mean, it was obviously imagination. It's obviously it's my baby, but I
Yeah.
mean, it was obviously a fucking masterpiece, right?
Yeah. It's a great
It's got
song.
Niall and Bernard Edwards and Tony Thompson from
Oh,
Chic, and
yeah.
it's got everyone playing on it, and it just works, and I'd spent
Yeah.
years getting there. And the English radio and the English press didn't want to play it because they didn't they couldn't quantify it. They couldn't. But then the Italians would play it and the Europeans played it. It was a hit everywhere. And then it was re-released in England and they said, well, this time it's our record and it's a hit. And then, they made it their
They wanted
record.
to claim it.
Yeah, they claimed it.
Interesting. So were you at Power Station? Is that where you ended up recording?
I did some stuff at Power Station, but I did the initial stuff. I tell you what happened. I mean, I didn't want to go to New York. I didn't like the idea. I was very English. I didn't want to go to New York and record,
Sure.
but my
Selling
career
out.
was my career was in a terrible state. I'd recorded the first album and it was rubbish. So, of course, the record company's going, well, we're going to release it. I said, you can't release it. It's rubbish. I've spent 10 years trying to get here and you can't release this. This is my life. I'll be over. So,
Wait, you felt
um,
like that after the
oh,
recording?
yeah, because I'd recorded in London and the producer they put me with, the idiots, was a heroin addict.
Oh,
So he didn't turn up. So it was me and in fact, what it was me and Guy Fletcher, who then became obviously a dear friend of mine and was in dire straits, not
yeah.
literally, but the band. And
Right.
well, he is now. But he'd been with Roxy Music and Steve Harley and Chester Kamen the same. So it was me, Chester, and Guy sitting there in the studio every night till about 4 in the morning recording. But we didn't have a producer. We were all very young. So we were coming up with these great ideas, but we needed someone to pull them all together. And we had a great engineer as well, but we were recording the basics of lots of the songs, but they weren't productions, they were just great ideas. It's
Right.
like some people, Guy and I did over 2 bottles of white wine on a Friday night. It took 2 hours.
Wow,
And
really?
yeah, I played some people up with my finger. The reason it's so basic, it was a joke. On the multi-track, you can hear us all having a party. I mean, it was me with my finger going dum 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 dum, and so we were supposed to be doing a B-side mix, but we recorded some people. I mean, I wrote it and recorded it, and so I had all these great people around me, but we didn't have anyone to pull it together. So they said, well, you can go to New York and we're going to do a remix of one of your tracks and we're going to release it as a single. So we got these guys and they just done Talk Talk, It's My Life.
Right.
And it was Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero. So I come to New York and actually the minute I got off the plane, my life changed. I realized that I was in a place that I felt very, very comfortable in for the first time in my life as a creative person.
Really,
I
you had the
felt,
support.
yeah, I just remember driving in from JFK going, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
Yeah.
And just the energy of the city and
Sure.
so anyway, it's a cut a long story short, they did the mix. I remember we left at the studio at 5 in the morning, drove to Long Island. I passed out on Fire Island, woke up at 10 o'clock, surrounded by um, mainly sort of very naked men, or more or less naked men, wondering, is this what all Americans do at the weekend?
Right.
Saying, can I get, and I was very white and pale and very
Yeah.
thin in those days. I said, I want to go back to Manhattan. How do I get back? And I remember I was stuck on Fire Island and it was baking hot. I'd been up all night and I eventually got back to Manhattan. I don't know how I got back. Anyway, but that was that was my Fire Island story. Got back to studio, came back to London, and thought, right, I need to re-record my album or most of it or half of it. How am I going to do this? So I said to Steve had these managers, Mark Bevan and Andy Kipnis, who are AAM, who I think now are the bees bollocks, aren't they? They're the AAM, do all the management and promotion for everyone. I think I
Right.
keep on seeing their name everywhere, and anyway, they haven't spoken to me for 20 years or 30 years, but the point was they were great mates of mine at the time, and I remember saying to them, "Look, I need to record my album." Steve hadn't been produced anyone in those days. So I said, well, they said, we want Steve to be a producer. I said, well, I want him to produce me, but how are we going to do it? So they came up with this idea. Carlos Alima, who was around at the time, had said he wanted to work with Steve about something. And Carlos said, well, I'd love to do it. Obviously liked English artists. And so he said, I'll get Bernard Edwards and Tony Thompson, because I know that Bernard and Tony would be happy to do something with me.
Nice.
So I sent him Imagination on an answer phone cassette, um, which was running fast. So it was always recorded in the wrong key. And I always remember that. And I arrived on a Saturday afternoon in October. It was pouring with rain. We went in the studio and we recorded Imagination in 4 hours, everything, backing vocals, live vocal.
No kidding.
Yeah. And we went to Area that night and played it, and everyone carried on dancing. And so I knew I had a hit. And that's basically the story of Imagination. I mean,
Same day. That's incredible.
yeah,
So you recorded,
yeah.
had it
I
in the can, and
mixed
then
it.
actually played it that night at a gig?
I played it at Area, the nightclub, which was
Wow.
the most amazing nightclub in the world. I
Yeah.
remember we went down there, and about 3 in the morning, we went up to the DJ booth. You had to climb a ladder. I remember that, and put it on, and everyone just, thousands of people just carried on dancing.
Oh, man.
And the DJ goes, "You got a hit there," and
The
it
ultimate
just,
test.
yeah. And I came back to London, got back Tuesday morning, and said, "There's your hit."
Man.
A- And and but it had taken me a long time. It was, I was on the last chance saloon, Kevin.
Yeah.
I'd pushed my luck. The other thing about the story was I remember EMI said, "What's the budget in London?" And I was signed to Capital in LA, and EMI in London, Parlophone in London. And they said, "What's the budget?" And faxes were new. And I remember the fax came over, and it was $34,000, for the weekend. I think I recorded another song as well. I did, actually. And so we Tipexed out one of the zeros and gave it to EMI. So it said 3,400. And in fact, it was
Oh
34,000.
my god, man. That's so I mean, the people don't often really get to hear the financials. That's another part of this too, right? Is that
No.
the the
Yeah.
insidiousness of the music business and how really difficult it is
Yeah.
to get. I mean, and also the
Yeah.
idea of budgets and advances, so when you get an
Oh,
advance and not
yeah.
realizing how
Yeah.
recoupable all that is, and really you're in debt forever to these record labels.
Yeah.
So was that
Yeah.
something that maybe plagued you for a while as well?
No, but my recording contract was a joke, and so was my initial publishing
Yeah.
contract, because the lawyer that did it also worked for the record company.
Of
I
course.
mean, I'm not even going to go down that road. My record deal is forever, including, Saturn, Venus, black holes,
Yeah.
the next universe.
Oh,
I mean, they're record companies. I mean, it's not even worth going down. And also the way you recoup. You only recoup on what are the costs. I mean, it's boring. Everyone knows the story about artists, especially in the 80s. There's a golden rule at festivals. Um, I was warned when I went to do my first festival. I did a thing in 2019, just two songs, and they said, whatever you do, don't mention publishing backstage, because every single band there had been ripped off.
oh, yeah. That's
You know,
the age-old story
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Well, I mean, like,
So
the um, the difference between those days and now, I know you had some success with, like, Round Round, right? So Pretty in Pink, you had
yeah.
you had John Hughes movie, like, at least placement. Did royalties follow you through, so you're at least able to make a little bit
No,
off
no,
that?
no,
No?
no, absolutely not. No, my the big years when I had all the money from Some People Imagination. Um, in those days, the publishers were all in different countries, and they all had to pay your publisher. I remember the Italians. I remember saying, "I got big hits in Italy. Still, Imagination's massive in Italy," and I just remember saying, "Well, they haven't. I didn't know. No one told me about PRS." So I didn't know about that. I remember finding out about that about 10 years after, so someone had taken that. And then I remember saying, but what about the Italians? Do they pay anything for I'm going back to Italy every week. And they said, oh no, the Italian publisher usually pays after about 3 years, and we never see anything really anyway,
My
because
God.
it's to steal it. And then what happened is my publisher decided to sell the catalog. I asked to buy it as well. I mean, I didn't have the money, but I said, I'll buy it. I'll buy it. He
Yeah.
said, no, we're selling it. He sold it to his best friend, who then stole all the money and then went bankrupt and never paid me. And do you know what? Um, that was the glory days of bank commercials, Panasonic commercials. Imagination was used for so many really big campaigns,
Yeah.
and I never saw that money. It's at least £1 million, which is
Oh my God, man. Well, you had a big deal with Swatch, right? Swatch watches.
yeah. Swatch put money into the my Some People video,
Yeah.
because they use it, and obviously they used it as a TV commercial, and then they also sponsored my tours, because you needed money to do these tours.
Yeah.
And that was quite new in those days, the corporate sponsorship. But then my manager at the time, Danny, he did corporate sponsorship. He did the Coca-Cola deal for Duran Duran and the
Oh,
Who and
nice.
things. So he knew what he was doing. Swatch, but the Swatch guys were fantastic, and Swatch was new, and that was revolutionary. I mean, that
Sure.
was changed the world. But no, on the money front, we were ripped off massively. And then, of course, I got Bill Kerbershy became my manager, who manages the Who, and he's an industry legend and tough as old boots. So if my career had carried on the correct path, then I would have not been ripped off anymore. But because he bailed the Who out,
Oh, really?
Bill.
Okay.
So he's the one who, yeah, he's the man. He's an amazing guy. So,
Man,
but I,
it's daunting, right? If any kid were to hear those stories before deciding to get into the music business, and
yeah.
it's a really difficult, that mountain to climb is even more difficult, I think, now than even then, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Kevin, I mean, I'm a fanatical social media person, right?
Yeah.
And apart from TikTok, which just I can't make work for me, but I'm on it all the time, and
Sure.
I'm looking at all the stuff. And so, by the way, please, everyone, follow me on Belouis Some on Instagram.
Absolutely.
But the TikTok, you hear them all going, "Oh, this is not fair, and that's not fair." I mean, you've just heard two of my many stories of you suddenly go from being a really nice person to being incredibly devious and really, I mean, you realize if you want to make a career work, you've got to play the same game they play.
Yep.
So, you've heard about me tipexing out the budget, and you've heard me, this is just a few things. You've got to be really savvy, and you've got to fight the same fight they fight,
You
and
bet.
you've got to play dirty like they
Yep.
do, which is
Yeah.
what I learned to do. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, if you're complacent or even a little bit timid about the business, you're certainly going to get walked on. And
yeah,
by the way, I added the Insta link down below. So folks, if you're watching this or just listening to this, if you go to at
yeah,
Belouis Some on Instagram, that's where you're going to find Neville. Uh,
yep.
so one of the things that I've heard you mention here and in past, and even when we first met, you mentioned that you were forced out of the industry, right? So the music business kind of like cast you away.
Well,
And
the idiots. I mean, I came. I mean, I did this amazing album with Carmine Rojas and Carlos Almo and Robin Clark in New York, and we spent 4 months in New York. I brought over Chester Kamen and Guy Fletcher, co-produced, and Gary Langan from Art of Noise, and Jeff Dugmore, the Borneo Horns, Robin Clark. I mean, you name it, everyone. And I made it so that we were a band. So I wanted to be so we weren't. They weren't session musicians; they were a band.
yeah,
So we rehearsed the songs and we recorded them, and we had this amazing album, which is the second album. And so we go back, and Ian and I, Parlophone in England, really happy. So's Capital, all the European labels, all really happy. But it all hinges on the UK release. So it goes to radio, it's doing really well. And then the release week, they, they've done all the press, all the release launch, but there's no records in the stores. So, so about midweek, I'm going, there's no records in the stores, and the sales are obviously not there because there's no records.
right.
And And the guy comes back. He says he's been on holiday. He goes, "Oh, I thought it was next week."
Oh
This
my
is the
god.
sales manager for the whole of EMI, right? This is vast. And but the problem was, he's very sorry. He said he was very sorry. But the point is, radio pulls the record from every station. So 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 uh, so every station pulls the record. The record just collapses. The Europeans go, well, it's not a hit in in England, so we're not pushing it. The Americans go, well, you don't expect us to. What the hell are we supposed to do? There were dance hits already in the States, A Man or a Magic and Let It Be With You. But so the record companies, they're all very sorry about it, but they've absolutely destroyed £1 million worth of
Oh
albums.
my god.
So I'm sitting there with a dead album, having spent a year and a half, and so then, okay, fine. I live to fight another day, right? And then it's just really silly. Bill Coventry decides he's going to retire. Okay, so he says, but don't worry, I'll make sure I fix you up with someone else, right? Because you're a great artist. And so anyway, Bill's in the process of retiring. The record company's in the process of not knowing what to do with me because so Bill says, you shouldn't be with EMI anymore because they've messed up your second album as well as your first one. It hasn't been a hit. I'll get you off the label. You don't worry, every other label will have you. So I'm, this is Kevin, you're going to understand this. So I'm an artist now without a label and without a manager, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, everyone says, because you're really talented and it's going to be fine. And of course, that's not how the industry works.
Absolutely.
I'm perceived as you know, don't go near him. I'm toxic.
Yeah.
So I
Especially
did,
if you're
yeah.
if you're making a little bit of noise about not being taken care of by the label, or at least, saying, "Hey,
I was
pay
always very
attention to me."
nice about the label, but the thing is, I'm quite a flamboyant character. I
Sure.
wasn't, so I wasn't, and also, again, remember, I'm hard to categorize. I'm a solo artist
Sure.
who plays live.
Yeah.
So my band's it's a real rock band. I'm
Yeah.
not a pussy.
Right. Yeah.
But in the UK, solo artists are perceived as pussies. And I ain't one.
Right.
So anyway, so that's what happened. So I made my third album. It was great. Nothing much happened. BMG were useless. Usual record company story. And so after that, I thought, well, fuck the whole lot of you. I ain't groveling around. The 90s were tough for 80s artists
Yeah.
anyway. But
Yeah.
I wasn't going to sniff around trying to get a gig, so I stopped.
You
You know,
walked. Yeah.
yeah. And I lived in central London, so I was still around, but no one really knew, if you know what I
Sure.
mean.
At that point, no kids, no family or anything like that?
No, I mean, no, I didn't have any kids or family. I was having a great time though.
Yeah, I
I
bet.
mean, I was on the rampage everywhere, and particularly in Paris. The French are always very nice to artists,
Sure.
and I've been quite successful in France, and so I spent a lot of time in France where, you know, they were nice to me. So, and they paid as well. The French always paid their royalties. They paid artists well.
Oh,
So
man.
I was always quite happy with the French.
Yeah. Well, and do you have any interest in relocating at that point? I know Peter
Well,
Godwin
I
mentioned
sort
that.
of spent, well, I had a girlfriend who sort of lived there. She was a model. And then I met my wife in Paris. She was a
Okay.
model as well. And so they all had apartments, so I would spend time there. And it's only in those days you could drive easily from London to Paris in like 4 or 5 hours. So I used to
Sure.
drive backwards and forwards. And nowadays, everything takes a long time.
Right.
But then it was really easy. So I really was comfortable in Paris. And London was dead in the early 90s, but Paris was rocking. And
Really?
then, they messed up, the government messed up Paris and everyone moved to London. So, and then London exploded in the sort of mid 90s, which is about the time I opened my nightclub.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so tell me about that.
Well, I needed to make some money, Kevin.
Yeah.
So I thought, what can I do? I'll open a little restaurant, like like a neighborhood restaurant. I live in Chelsea, so I thought, right, okay, I'll open a restaurant and it'll become really fashionable, like in the movies. Everyone will
Yeah.
go to my restaurant. So I found this property, and then um, I thought, well, I need someone who can cook. And so I found this guy, a very respectable guy, the son of a lord or a toff or something, and he got involved, and then his father said, "No, I can't have my son involved with you. You're just a rock, rock person, and you're not respectful enough for me." He was a sort of like a really poncy old boy, and I remember he was very rude to me. And so he said, "We'll buy you out." So he bought me out. So I'm stuck now. I still don't have my place. So I remember being in Paris with my now wife, but she was my girlfriend, and we there was this old boy, and he's a very famous property billionaire in the UK. He's dead now, um, and he's famous for buying a building from the government and selling it back to them 2 years later for 4 times the price.
Oh man.
He's so he's a very famous, and he was very and he took a shine to my girlfriend, who was Swedish, and very sweet and very beautiful, and he's this little old man. He was in his 70s or whatever, and so he said, "I've got a property for you," and it wasn't a sweet little restaurant. It was a massive um, nightclub, bar, restaurant, bang in the middle of Knightsbridge, which is a very expensive area of London. I said, "Well, Jack, this is like, it's a bit bigger than I thought." I mean, he was such a great property dealer that even though he liked me, I managed paying more rent than it was on the market for.
Oh
I mean,
man.
he was so good, and I was so bad. By the way, I'm the worst businessman in the world at this stage, right?
Oh,
So,
at this
so,
stage, yeah.
so, so I remember saying, "Well, I'll have it. I'll have it." Okay. And I went to see it, and it was a famous place from the 1920s, and the king had been there.
Wow.
Um, and so I thought, right, I'm going to have this place. And so I remember going to all my friends and saying, "I need to raise the money for this." And I remember I got about 20 mates put some money in. And to give you an idea, it cost well over £1 million to do, and I only had a quarter of that. But
Oh,
I started anyway, and I got it open, and it was a massive success. But the thing was, I'm not very good at that. I was very good at standing at bars and drinking, but I
sure.
wasn't very good at charging anyone for a drink or the logistics. So it was a financial disaster, but it was really good fun,
I'll
you know.
bet. Yeah. You hemorrhaged
And
money, but yeah, you got a chapter out of the book just to share.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, eventually the bank said, "You cut right, we're closing you down, fuckers," and uh, and then a couple of years on from that, I managed to get rid of the lease to a mate of mine, who then made it a really successful club for about 25 years. I mean, it closed a few
Really?
years ago, but yeah, no, the Wellington Club in London is, footballer paradise.
Wow.
Go in there and spend, a few grand on a bottle of vodka and hang out with all the, gentlemen from the Middle East and things like that. But mine with me, it was much more funky. It was
Sure.
dirty and dark and great. But so
Yeah,
anyway, that was the nightclub experience, which, by the way, was hell because suddenly being a businessman is just horrible.
yeah,
I was.
for sure. It's not as glamorous as playing rock and roll for sure.
No, I'm just waffling away, Kevin. You've got to shut me up when you want me to stop.
Oh, you know what? I mean, the thing
Mm.
that's really fascinating to me, you and I had a moment. It was finally a moment where we weren't backstage, we weren't around sound checks or shows where there was a quiet moment. And I remember I had just been kind of like in this meditation state, looking at the mountainside and looking at the Greek theater and
Mm.
just kind of giving thanks to the universe for putting me there, because
Yes, same here.
yeah, it was a really special place, and it was like 3/4 the way through the tour where we could look back and look at and celebrate, "Hey, man, we made it this far in a
Yeah,
really successful tour, in some of the most beautiful venues I'd ever been, and, with some amazing people." And, you were over on the side, and I popped over and said, "Hey, man, let's take a picture together and just share that moment." And you told me a couple of things about that journey. One of which was unbelievable, just super cool. Your time with Freddie Mercury and Queen. And I don't know
yeah.
how public you are with that story or not, but it was for me that was one of the highlights of my chats with you.
Freddie was okay. So I've always had, as I said, I mean, I've never had the conventional path because unfortunately, I've always tried to be conventional, but it's never worked. I
Yeah,
mean, firstly, Belouis Some, firstly, solo artist, firstly, the record company always wanted to market me as a pretty boy. And okay, I was probably quite good looking and handsome in the 80s. Now I look like a thug, but granddad thug. But
Handsome thug.
you're very kind. But I mean, only when there's a filter. I mean, and the thing is, I still see someone who's 24. Unfortunately, the rest of the world sees a 65-year-old. It's really
Yeah.
annoying. But the and the promoters always had issues with me. They just, I mean, the audiences were great, and I love the audiences; they were fantastic. But so everyone did this pop festival in 1986 in Montreux. It was an MTV thing, and it was filmed for about 4 days, and it went out all around the world. I mean, even my mother saw it, and I mean, when I say everyone, I mean everyone. Rock bands, American bands flew in for it, and we did it in Montreux, in this side of a mountain, the most beautiful place on earth, right? And of course, it was party central. It's 1986. It's
Mhm.
May. It's hot. Uh, there was probably 50 bands there, and we all
Wow.
went crazy for about 4 days, right? So and we're all young, and and you drink your way through a hangover, don't you?
Right.
We were we were having the time of our life, and everyone was in good form, and we were all mates. And so we did the show. The show was 2 nights. So, and we do one song on one night, the next song on the next night. And first night I did Imagination. It was great. And then we all went out all night. It was crazy. And I remember there was a girls' school up the road. um, anyway,
He just washed right over that. That's
yeah, just, and
understood. Yeah.
it was a boarding school, girls' boarding school. Anyway. And what were we talking about? Oh yeah, mod. And so we did the second night, and the second night, after the second night, the big thing was there was going to be a party on Lake Geneva on a steamship to launch Queen's new album. It was the first album in a few years. And it was EMI were throwing everything at this, and I'm on EMI, so that was cool. And all the bands were invited, everyone was invited, and it was about 11 o'clock. The part after the MTV show ended, and it was a different time. We were having fun. There was nothing that you couldn't do and whatever. It was crazy. It was
Yeah.
rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I remember we did the show. We'd all, by this stage, we'd all had a few drinks when we were on the show. The show was brilliant, right? It was electric. And then we all went trundling off to the steamship, and I'm downstairs on this steamship. I remember I was with Julian Lennon, I was with In Excess, Michael Hutchinson, I was with Frankie Goes to Hollywood, I was with a whole load of everyone. We were all downstairs. We were having the time of our life, laughing and whatever, just about to probably work on the girls' school. I don't know, but
Right.
I mean, we were all rampaging around,
Sure.
and this very serious looking executive comes down and says, "Neville, Freddie Mercury wants to meet you." They'd arrived, Queen, and they'd done their announcement. They're going to do this tour, stadium tour, the first big stadium tour of Europe. Blah 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 blah. And I'll tell you the postscript to this story in a minute. But so yeah, and so I knew about this tour, and they s- and anyway, they said, and Freddie wants to meet you, Neville, and in front of all these other bands. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was a bit embarrassed, I mean, like, oh, fine, okay, but so I'll go meet Freddie. So be back in a minute, mate. To all the others. So I trundle off up this boat upstairs, and Freddie's there with arms open wide, and I'm blowing my own trumpet here, but this has happened. It's filmed. There's pictures of this happening. Freddie's arms open wide with a big audience, and says, "Ha ha! Here he is, the star of the show.
Mm.
Here
Nice.
he is." And he then looks over at the managing director of EMI and says, "He is going to open my stadium tour, or our stadium tour. Here's the opening. Here is the opening act for our stadium tour." And and said, "And here is Belouis Some. He's going to open the tour for us."
That's crazy, man.
and
And
and I remember the guy, was his name? Nice guy, Peter Jameson. He was the MD, and he said, "No, Freddie, no, no. We spent so much money on him, please." And and Freddie said, "He's opening my show." And said, "Come and sit with me." And so I sat with Freddie, and we got drunk. And then he said, "Right, darling, we're going off now." So we left. and we went back to a party at his place where he had an apartment in Montreux, but he was the nicest guy on earth, and he taught
I'm
me a lot.
sure. I'll
And
bet.
and meanwhile, I've got all my mates downstairs going, "What's going on? What's going on?" And
Yeah,
then one by one, they were coming up, and they were all, I mean, but in those days, everyone was, it was nice. It was a
yeah,
nice atmosphere. We were all mates. We were all young. I
you
mean,
bet. Oh, man,
yeah,
and it really, I mean, Queen is at, the height of all popularity at that point. MTV had even
yeah,
launched them even
yeah.
farther, right? So you
Yeah.
did the stadium tour with them?
I did, and there was a compromise. I did the ones that matter. I
Okay.
did Nedworth, which was the biggest one.
Yeah.
That was the one that made, the historic one. There was 100 well, they say 140,000 plus, but they don't know
Um,
because it was so big. It was, I did Paris. Um, I did Manchester. I didn't do Wembley, but if I was doing Nebworth the following week, so it didn't seem necessary to do
sure.
Wembley.
Yeah.
And also, I was on tour myself. But there was a postscript to this tour, its story is that I knew about this tour a couple of months before, and I knew that Queen were going to be at a managing directors convention. They used to do all these things, record companies in those days, and I was signed to the same label. And I said, "Can I come? Can I come?" And they said, "Well, you're not really big enough to come to this convention, but we'll get you in." So I went trundling off to this convention. It was at Glen Eagles in Scotland, very posh golf course. Um, and I knew Queen were there. And I then found out Freddie wasn't there. But I thought, well, I'll go and get Queen on my side to do the tour, right?
Yeah.
So it got to about midnight and we're all pretty pissed, which means drunk in English.
Yeah.
And and I said, right, I've got to go and find them, because they're in the hotel somewhere. So me and I think it was me and the promotions woman, Jane, someone, we went trundling off down the corridors to look for the guys in Queen's rooms because we knew they would be drinking or partying in the rooms. Eventually, I found that Roger Taylor's room, and they were all in there. And I banged on the door, and they opened me. And they, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Belouis Some. And can I come in?" So I came in. I want a drink, and so we all started having a drink. And I said, "Listen, you need me." I remember this. I remember. I don't. Luckily, Freddie didn't. Um, you need me. You're old.
Oh my god.
You're going on a big stadium tour. You need someone young and happening to open your concerts.
Full of hubris
Luckily,
and bravado. Look at you, man. Oh my
yeah,
god.
luckily I got away with it. I remember saying it to him. I remember Roger going, "Oh, fuck off, you
Yeah.
stupid." But anyway, so I had sort of already. I don't think that Freddie knew it. I'd already broached it with the rest of the band who thought I was a lunatic.
Oh my god.
And so that's my Queen story. Well, that's the first one. The rest are all nice ones. That's the,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, but that one is a great launching pad for sure.
yeah,
So that was '86, you mentioned?
yeah. That was 1986, and then I went on. I was always touring. I was always playing. I had a great English band, and we used to rampage our way around wherever we went. And there was so much more live in those days. I mean,
Yeah,
you know how difficult it is live now with venues closing
right.
and the costs and all that. And then I went to New York to make the album, and then ready to spend 1987, 88 promoting. That's when it went a bit
That's yeah.
wrong.
Well, when the industry changed, in the '90s, you
Yeah,
mentioned kind of
yeah,
walking away from all that, and,
yeah,
you were that was the other story I remember you telling me at the Greek is, at some point, there
yeah.
was maybe a little bit of stigma to the career path, right? But what made you go into your next line of work?
Well, the thing is, the nightclub thing had had. Hang on, let me just see how much charge I've got if I can move. The nightclub thing obviously was not didn't work,
Sure.
and then I went back to. This is a music story. I went back to recording. I thought this is about 3 years later, but I felt very different as an artist because it's very difficult to be a businessman and then suddenly become an artist again.
Right.
And and it was it was all lovey-dovey records, and if you remember, everyone was doing E and um, oh, I just remembered something. I'll tell you in a minute. So I wasn't really. into what was going on, because I wasn't doing E, and I wasn't feeling very lovey-dovey, having just lost a fortune
Yeah.
for everyone in a nightclub, So I wrote the songs that I wrote, and there were wars happening and things. So I wrote actually the third album, which is, I think, probably the most pointed of all the songs I've ever written, because I wrote them about something. I wrote them about wars and miserable things and whatever. But it's a great album. I'm going to do this album eventually, but I don't own the album, and I don't own the songs, and I'm very reluctant to do it. Well, my brother says that I must do it regardless, because I'm too old to be proud. But so I am going to start doing these songs. But anyway, but the problem I had after the nightclub was the songs. But now what happened was, I did go in the studio and I recorded the demos for an entire fourth album. But Kevin, you're not going to believe this. I forgot about it, and I didn't. I'd thrown everything away except for one CD that I had with all the songs on, that I found about 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
And it's been corrupted by some Chinese virus. But I've managed to get rid of the Chinese and on AI, and I've managed to find the demos. So I do actually have the demos for a fourth album. So I must have written this album despite the fact I was very angry with everyone. And I have actually started teasing a new single, actually, on social media, which I'm not sure I'm going to just release it anyway. I think I'm too. What's the point of holding on? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I've
absolutely.
started teasing it this week, and I'm going to tease it some more, and then I'm going to put it out myself, and just what the hell. But
Hey,
anyway, that sidetrack. For what was that doing? Oh yeah, I needed to make some money, didn't I? So I thought, what the hell can you do? And there wasn't anything I could do. I mean, I couldn't go out and play, couldn't get arrested. I didn't have a degree in nuclear physics. So I thought, what's the one thing you can do? I thought I'll make porn movies. So I set up a company that made adult content. So I I started producing adult content.
no kidding. Yeah. Did you have contacts in the business already, or you just
No,
knew
no,
you're
this is a bit like the nightclub, Kevin. I thought it would be straightforward. You know,
sure?
I didn't. I've never really known what I was doing about anything, if the truth be known. So, no, I just thought, it can't be that hard. I'll get a cameraman. I'll go to an agency. I'll, employ some crew and cast, find a nice location, and I'll shoot a movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like
Right.
that.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess it could work for Scorsese. It could probably work for Neville, right? So,
Yeah, it was not like that at all. The
yeah.
first movie, um, I mean, I wrote a book about it, so I've got a book. I've actually got an autobiography out there, but it's on Amazon. But it's not with my name, because my brother at the time had just become a vicar, which in the UK means priest,
Sure.
and Anglican. So he has a family, and he had young children. I thought, oh God, the last thing he needs is his brother, who's got a very similar same surname, very rare surname. You know, putting out a book about making porn movies.
Sure. Yeah.
So I didn't do that. But so anyway, no, I started doing it, and it was an adventure, a big adventure. And eventually I got it right. And eventually, I was producing a ton of movies for Playboy and other big companies all around Europe, and eventually the US. So it did very well.
Yeah. You
See that?
finally landed a career that eventually lend itself to some success there. That's
Well,
good.
the thing is, it's like anything else. You have to. I mean, the thing is, okay. Firstly, let's make it very clear. I wasn't in the
Right.
movies. Okay,
Producing.
yeah, I produced them. I mean, it was me going no, and I did them very differently from the way anyone else has ever done them. I marketed them differently, because the people marketing porn movies fundamentally didn't like women.
Sure.
And I realized this very early on, that people who made porn movies didn't like women. I liked women. I
Sure.
regarded it as my specialist subject. So I wanted everyone to look good and be happy, and so my cast was always happy, and we shot in great locations, and we didn't do funny scripts, and we didn't.
Sure.
And I had a makeup artist on one shoot and then fired them because that was trouble. I realised makeup artists were trouble, and especially in a porn movie. And
Sure.
then I marketed them differently, and I remembered I did my own distribution at the beginning, and they said you can't sell them like that. You know, I said I can, and eventually mine started to outsell everyone else's. So, but they underestimated their market. The people who were making, they were making so much money. I mean, in all fairness, I joined at the end of the glory days, so
Yeah.
I didn't make a fortune, but I got it away, and for about 5 or 6 years, it did pretty well. And
I,
I'm actually the nicest people I ever met were the people who made adult movies. They were just the best, and they were just different. They thought differently from the rest of
sure.
us. They do think differently from the rest of us. They don't have the hang-ups the rest of
Right.
because sex is the thing that hangs everyone up. Isn't it? Sex is what fucks everyone up. I mean,
Right. In so many places. Right.
and if you don't have a hang-up about sex, you're actually, that's most of the problems gone. I think.
Yeah. Right. You it's funny and great that you had these experiences that led yourself to be able to come back around, right? So 40 years later, Neville comes back out, Belouis Some is out touring again, with the benefit of having the experience of all some of those difficult times, also some pretty remarkable times, and you can enjoy it again, which is rare for a lot of people, because one thing I noticed watching you tour, man, you're not mailing it in 1%. I mean, you are 100% all the time, from the time you walk on stage or even off stage. You are just you, and I commend you on bringing that personality, forth. One
Thank
thing
you.
I love to ask, at the end of every episode is, what is it when you look back at the very end of your time? What is it that you want to be remembered for? What's your legacy?
Um, oh, this music. I mean, this is what I set out to do. This is what I started doing at 14, writing songs. I mean, I didn't want to. I've never. There wasn't a day in my life. I mean, my children didn't know I was a singer for until they were, I mean, 10, 11, when we were on holiday, and I remember them came out. We were having dinner, the grown-ups, and the kids came out, and they said, Daddy, is this you? And they had a YouTube video, and obviously I was much fatter and older, and I said, yeah, this is me. And, you know, I, every song I've ever written, I'm proud of, and that's what I want to remember for. Well,
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, guys, if you came here late, make sure you go back to the beginning of this and check out Neville at either belouissum.com or at Neville. I'm sorry, at Belouis Some on Instagram, all the social medias. I'm really, really looking forward to getting back out on the road and doing more gigs with you and your band. They all
okay.
became great pals.
Yeah.
Man, it's just a blessing to get to know a little bit more about the behind the scenes of Neville. And man, I applaud you, my friend. I'm really glad to
Thank
see
you,
that
Kevin.
this is the
Well,
resurgence.
it was great. I can't tell you how lovely everyone was and how nice it was to meet you. And it was a very special tour. I mean, I've met, like you, I've met some, I've been in situations, but everyone was just lovely.
Yeah,
And you were
yeah,
great. And it was such a happy environment. And we're really lucky to have that, aren't we?
yeah.
I mean,
Amen, amen. Well, listen, like hopefully people can get back through here and find you online and
yeah.
watch for that fourth album that gets released. And again, guys, I'd love it if you subscribe at youtube.com/adaccesskevin. Thank you for sharing your time with me, buddy. And I look forward to
See
connecting
you
soon.
soon, Kevin. See you
Thank you, buddy.
soon.
All right, take care.
See you.